order. Kathy Lee, could you take the roll call, please?
Arbaugh present, Gron,
Present.
Gallops, Hutton, Polish, Split,
Here.
Willett,
Present.
So we do have a,
4 of us,
yes.
3 missing. And you know, Adam and Craig aren't here.
And Craig sent me an email, he's out.
He's out of
He won't
town.
be- Right.
Forever.
Approval of tonight's agenda. It was brought to my attention, apparently people do read this,
Oh, really?
that our last April 6th, the roll call, we had Sarah Willett present and Sarah Willett absent.
Well, I'd like to be elusive.
Oh, yeah,
Just
there-
gonna be- yeah.
I'd like
This
to
is
keep it up, keep us on our
Present,
toes.
Willett, absent, Willett.
Yeah.
Were you here or not?
Yeah.
I didn't receive any of this via email, so I don't know who sent
Oh, you
this
did?
out.
Okay.
Karen from the
Karen,
front office
yeah.
will make
Okay.
sure you're on there, Pat.
Yeah.
I can call her.
And I will get that noted.
I'll just send it right now. Darn it all.
Okay. So we'll need a motion
To amend,
to amend.
it would be appropriate if I made the
Sure,
motion to
why
amend
not?
the fact that Sarah Willett was present and not absent at the last meeting.
Is there a second?
I second.
Motion by Sarah, second by Kathy Lee to amend April 6th, 2022 agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Willett.
So was that the
Oh, I'm
agenda
sorry.
or the meeting
I
minutes?
did that wrong.
Because
I'm sorry.
there's this,
Yes.
I have no agenda.
I said, I skipped around.
This is it.
Okay.
That was the past minutes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you for, now we can approve.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Pat, second by Sarah to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we do have a financial report this month.
I have a question about this since I'm new to the committee. What is this available budget available for? Do we have
It-
budgetary guidelines?
Yes, historically it was set up for, what's the correct word? Like to teach or education of historic preservation.
Okay.
But we can, and we did use, last year we used it for, you probably know the.
The signs.
The
Snyder
signs,
did.
yep. And that falls right in line with education and
Right.
all that.
Right.
Hoping that this year, another scout, Eagle Scout maybe, would like to do that, I don't know.
We're doing it at the Historical Society.
Okay,
So that's why I had some ideas about how this could be utilized for,
Mhm.
I've got 2 projects in mind, but I was just wondering what the guidelines were on
right.
it.
And we can pick and choose where it goes.
Sure.
Yeah, you
And the amount that it
present
goes,
it.
and,
Sure.
again, we have a lot, I mean, to me, that's a lot of money for a
And that
budget.
carryover
And if we
fee.
don't, yes, if we don't use it, people are gonna look at it and say, why give them $2,000 if they don't use it every
But I
year?
think there's some wonderful projects we can be using it for, as long
Okay.
as I know what the parameters are.
Mhm.
So maybe I can put those in under like a new business, and then
Sure.
For the
they
next
can go on
agenda.
for a next agenda.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
we'd
Mhm.
be happy
Yeah,
to
we-
hear,
Right.
that's fine.
Yep.
Great, okay.
And it's just, we could, now that we discussed it, we have $5,657.82, a carryover from last year and then this year's budget. So,
And COVID, I'm sure, precluded a lot of work
Yeah.
and things,
Yeah,
yes.
we haven't spent money
and we
since
haven't.
I've been on the board.
Okay.
Years ago, we spent them for these little brochures, those little stickers that you might see on buildings downtown. This is, you know, those, but
Right.
we really never spent, I think the most we
One-
spent,
One thing that David Gallops had mentioned was putting a directory downtown of the block, the 1, 2, 300s.
There's one in front of JJ's though.
It's current though.
mhm.
We
Yeah, his
want
idea was,
historic.
pick a, say 1900, And
Oh,
what
sure.
was 211 Watson, or what was Sarah's
But the
building.
signs would preclude that, so.
What do you mean?
Oh, we can get
The
into that. Let's
individual
approve
sign.
this first.
Sure.
And then we
Sure.
can go on to the ideas.
Okay.
How's that?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, we need a motion to accept the financial report.
I so move to accept the financial report as presented.
And I'll second.
Motion by Pat, second by Sarah to accept the financial report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I don't think there's any public comment. So then we're down to number 7, Certificate of Appropriateness Application, 336 Scott Street, Horner House.
I don't know.
And I've waited 2 months for a drawing by like an architect
Right.
for the
Sure.
front porch.
Oh, cool.
It's supposed to be here by the end of the week, but we don't have it. So all I'm gonna present is a picture of 1885, and I can pass it around, that shows
I've
front
seen
porch.
it already, so
Yes,
yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
What is it, a wraparound?
Yeah.
Yes, a
wraps around to the
wraparound.
left side.
Probably not original to the house. I think original to the house would have been just something centered over the front door, smaller. I feel the Victorian era brought in the wraparound porches. But the state of Wisconsin, historical, because we're going for tax credits.
Understood.
Whether we use them or not, we're
Yep.
still following.
Yep.
The guidelines.
The guidelines they did approve a front porch. It does not have to be a wraparound,
Mm-hmm.
because that has changed on the side. But, so we're thinking just a front,
Sure.
the
So
full width of the
Yeah.
building.
are the columns still there?
Nothing's there.
Nothing is
So
there.
you'll
They
put
changed that to a
the
little
columns
entry.
Mhm.
in? And then what about below
This side had the
the
wraparound.
porch? You're gonna have this
lattice.
lattice?
We'll have some type of lattice very similar to that. Now, in that picture of 1885, they show like a turned baluster. And that was, again, bothering me. And I kept going up into the attic for things to do. And there was this railing around the attic stairway. And that's one picture of it.
No, that
And
looks
if you
more-
look, these columns are full square, okay?
Yeah,
Now, if you look at this is the back side of the railing.
Got it.
They're half squares. So doing some research, talking with the state, talking with Jim Larson, you might know him from Oshkosh, we come to the conclusion this was original to the outside, and they repurposed it inside, because this would have been, this half would have butted up to the
Right.
building.
How interesting. How cool that
And
you
then
discovered that.
I
But
kind
why would
I
the-
tried to zoom in on this one, and you can see that it was outside, because this is all weather checked.
Yeah.
The paint is,
Jen, why would they use the smaller ballast outside, or what is that called, newel post?
Newel post.
And then the bigger one inside, or are those the same?
they're basic, you mean on the outside of the porch? or-
Those two right there, are those the same?
These are the same, but they're half this way,
Hmm.
which represents that it butted up to a building,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been up above or down below on the main. So the state said that this is what they want to replicate. We can go to the turn balusters,
Sure.
but I'm pretty sure that, in 1850, maybe I'm sure out east, the Industrial Revolution was making turn balusters, but around here in 1850,
It was a little bit.
it would have been
And
more like this, and an on-site carpenter could have cut those out of wood.
I'm not
These-
familiar with this style, are you?
No.
Because I haven't
These
seen
they
it
could
before.
order from a catalog.
Sure, they
Yeah.
could.
The
Yeah.
turn ones, they
Mhm.
could just order it from a catalog and have it shipped via,
They're gross.
by a railroad.
Yeah, on a
Right.
wagon or
So,
whatever.
but the earlier days, things were quite different, but then they
Mhm.
rotted or whatever, and they wanted to update it. It's
Yes.
like this room here, that was redone during the Victorian period because that's very ornate,
Mhm.
like the Victorians, you
Yes.
know, on the first floor. And, you know, they took
Mhm.
out the fireplace and, yeah.
Yep, I know.
Yeah, so you
That
can
has-
see it being done.
It's-
And
and
if
that's-
you notice, oh, I'm sorry,
No.
these are so short because there were no building codes then.
Right, and they typically, when this,
Yeah.
this style of building, when they designed this, whoever designed these homes, this type of home, it was always level with the windowsill.
Mhm.
It was never higher than
Oh,
the windowsill.
Yeah, because they
It
wanted to
was
be able to see
for
out.
aesthetics, it wasn't for safety and.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
And on
we
the
can.
inside, the same way.
Yes.
The stair rails
Yeah.
going upstairs.
Yeah, they're very
Yeah.
short.
They're very scary.
Terrifying.
We can rebuild to that
Oh, you.
short, yeah.
Hmm.
I wouldn't build a porch with a 3-foot high railing on a house like that. It would look
It would be
terrible.
awful.
So, but without more drawings, detailed drawings,
You're guessing.
we're guessing, and I'm saying also that we don't need a certificate approved tonight. If you guys want to wait,
I don't think there's a reason not to.
Well, it's, if there's being guidelines followed by the state,
mhm.
it's like you can assume that it's going to be done
What about the
properly.
color? Have they told you anything?
The original color was this brown,
Oh, really?
and that really,
And that's
Um,
paint?
I had a guy there that did a lot of refinishing and finishing and stuff, and it's like a milk paint.
Ah.
So it's old, you know,
Yeah.
And what was the year for the original property?
1850.
But that's not definite.
No, it's not that, some say 48,
No.
some say 50, some say even later.
The family said 47, but there was nothing here in 47. They would have been the only people over there. So
Mhm.
our archivist is actually researching this, and so is Steve Arbaugh
Good.
at the Historical Society. So they're actually looking through some family records and
Mhm.
different things to see if they can put more of a date on it. Because we think that's way too early compared to.
It
I
doesn't
mean,
make sense.
Literally, they were putting up like basically a log house here on Watson Street at that
Mhm.
time.
Right, this would be two pulled together.
Right, for that time. The other thing Carol said is where did they get the limestone from? Because Ceresco was sending out for their brick
Mhm.
and they were making
If it
their
was
own brick.
available, they
So,
did.
right, where were they getting the supplies for this? It's too
Well, and
early.
the
just to-
finery of the inside,
Right,
you know, that is gorgeous, all
Mhm.
that woodwork. They didn't have.
The limestone, we've had some theories of that, because that does sit on a slight hill on Scott
Right.
Street.
Yeah,
That when they dug the basement,
so they took
They
some
took-
limestone out.
the majority or half, or probably not the whole thing, because there's a lot of,
Yeah, you'd need a lot more
You would
than
need a lot.
that, Yeah,
but it was probably quarried
yeah.
up, you know,
But it's a hard study because when did your quarries open? And, you know,
Mhm.
so Carol, the archivist
There's
at
a
the
cause and
Historical
effect.
Society is into these old records, trying to look at like, okay, when did this, and
so,
so.
so cool.
It'd be cool if you
Yeah.
could do it in stone underneath.
oh, underneath, well,
Yeah,
typically it wouldn't, you know,
It
they
wouldn't
built
have been.
porches like,
but it would look better.
well.
Just doesn't matter.
John, I have some woodwork upstairs on the Katina B building at 205 Watson. It's the same kind of honey tone.
Mhm.
A lot of our trim work up there and all the doors that are original are all that
Oh,
color.
Okay,
And it's
getting
very
back to that
primitive
color,
like this.
we're not gonna go with this, we
Okay.
don't have to go with this color.
Got it.
We believe we're gonna go with white.
Oh, okay.
Which would
And-
look better against the limestone.
I think so.
anyway,
It's
'cause
gonna
this
make
would
it-
blend
Set it
in.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So we're going with, it's white,
Yeah.
the majority is white, there's some green on there for some reason, but the majority is white all the way
Somebody trying to
around.
get in.
Did our door jamb fail?
No,
Okay.
Okay.
the door jam's open, so.
Well, that's exciting.
And-
Overall, are you feeling like progress is happening at a pace that's what you want it to be?
Yes,
Good.
yes, absolutely. And when I went in for the city building permit, since we're not, the Horner House is not locally designated, Sue Leahy said, well, you don't need to get a certificate of appropriateness.
Oh.
And I said, I believe you're wrong, and behind her on the wall is a piece of paper dated 19, and don't quote me on it, 97, 90, 9 maybe. And it lists, and it's signed by Steve Barg, and it was voted on by the city council, and it lists 7 or 8 or 9, I don't remember how many, homes that fall under this
And this is
certificate.
one of the homes.
This is one of the homes. But according to Lud Wertz, none of that matters because it never got recorded at.
Oh, geez, that.
Well, that's
Register of
another new
Deeds.
project to work on for
Yes.
this committee, because those houses should be,
They-
if they're recognized by the national,
Yes.
and so the
state.
yeah, right, they're
Doesn't that
telling us,
supersede
right.
our local?
Well, it doesn't actually, because our, being on the National Registry of Historic Places does nothing for a building, basically. It's the locals
It's
that
the
have
local, yes.
ordinance to protect them.
Mhm.
But having that local designation is the first step to then eventually developing an ordinance to protect historic buildings.
Mhm.
So it makes no sense to me as a historian, like, if they're on the National Register, well, why don't we recognize
Yeah.
them locally? So
Mhm.
I don't care what, you
And
know,
I-
I understand what Lud is saying, but then that is a subject to be put on next agendas, to have these
Mhm.
designated locally, you know,
That
because
should be our trigger.
it really should be,
It should
because
be.
here we're looking at buildings like
That's why we're all
this.
sitting here.
And
That's
this
why
is
we're
our
sitting here.
territorial governor's
Mhm.
house that owned a lot of Ripon and named Ripon, and what kind of respect do we have for that?
Right. I
That's-
agree.
Yeah. It's
Clearly
like,
you-
okay, well, clearly, that's the job of this commission and
Yes.
why it's been established,
Mhm.
is to designate homes like that,
Mhm.
you know?
And I'm gonna dig into that piece of paper. I have it. I have a copy of it or a picture of it. Sue Leahy has a copy of it. Steve Hollenbach, who was a past president,
Okay.
has the, physical piece
Sure.
of paper. And it says right on there that it was all passed, but nobody can find it in,
Recorded,
So
yeah,
it's not locally.
designated.
correct, it's
Okay.
not.
And it says it is on that sheet,
Yes,
but it wasn't.
Recorded,
yeah.
And nothing's been done for 25 years to.
yeah, I know,
That's so odd.
I know.
And people just took it for granted that it was
Oh.
under, just like
Oh.
the two residential districts.
Sure.
People followed the rules until it all came to a head with Alliance Laundry and all that. And we found out that they weren't actually certified.
Yeah,
So that's all I have for this.
Okay.
I can tell you that the windows are gonna be restored. I'm already restoring the doors.
and the
Paint.
knocker, the downstairs
I
knocker
love
is
that thing.
Victorian.
Yeah, it's
That was
weird.
added lately, it's a hand.
Yeah,
It's about
Is it
18,
cast? Is it cast?
yeah, it's about 18, what would you say, 75 or 80?
probably,
Somewhere in there.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty
Mhm.
cool knocker. I think I have a picture. It's a knocker, that
Yeah.
sounds funny. It's a whole knocker.
We don't need to see it.
No, it creeps out some people. Some people look at it and go,
No, it's
"Ugh."
No, but
Very
hands were part of
Victorian.
Victorian fashion.
It's very Victorian. yeah.
So, since we pretty much believe that
Wow, I've never seen
you're
it
gonna
like that.
follow all this, can we approve it so you can just keep moving?
Does it-
That was my question for you. It's completely,
But you
Do
have
we,
to abstain.
if it's not designated, does it need to be approved by this commission?
I truly, in my mind and heart,
Prefers-
it is locally designated. It should be.
Well,
So I would like it approved if you feel that it should be approved.
Can we vote, 3 of us, because you have to abstain?
I have to abstain.
Put it on next month's agenda then.
But if
I
the
can-
4 of us are present, it's kind of like when I wanted approval for my window
Yes,
decals. There were
right.
just 4 of us, I abstained.
It's still a quorum,
It's
even
still
though
a
if I
quorum, So we
abstain.
could pull it off tonight if we want to.
Well, I would make a motion that we approve a certificate of appropriateness for the Horner House as long as the national guidelines are being followed.
And I would second.
And second.
Heartedly.
I would just like to add that if anything changes, I'll bring it back,
Yeah, right,
Say
right.
I don't know what would change, but nothing is gonna change as far as I know.
So then it's just bases covered and we all feel better.
Yeah, right. Okay, there's a motion to approve certificate of appropriateness for 336 Scott Street, and a second by Sarah. All in favor, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
So
Abstain.
how should I word that? Pat makes motion to approve with, or, what did you say, Pat?
as long as this, national guidelines are being
Yeah.
followed, which are very strict. The
This,
national guidelines cost a lot more money to follow than if you just did it your own way.
right.
So
And we are,
that's, yeah.
I'm dealing with, his name is Paul Porter at the state,
Mhm.
and I email him at least once a week.
But if you
And he
don't,
said, the last one was, you don't have to tell me everything you're doing to the doors. Because what I did was,
yeah,
I put in a aluminum wood adjustable threshold, and you'd see the floors are so wonky in there that I need to,
Yeah.
when the doors close, I need to seal the bottoms.
right.
And
right.
so then I emailed him on that, and he said, that's perfectly fine, it's understandable, you put
Or
in.
you could just do white sound. Our house is like that too.
Yeah, but that's if you want the tax credits, you have to follow,
Right.
because if you don't, then they'll pull off the credits.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
sometimes if you do work before they approve it, they'll pull off the credits.
They will,
So it's a
that's what they
fine-
say, they will.
It
yeah.
is a fine
Mhm.
line
So
that
it's
you
better to
walk.
over-communicate.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I thought, now I got
Right,
proof that
right.
in case they come back and go, why'd you put that in? Well,
Right.
sorry, he said I could.
So I use the word assuming national guidelines are followed.
Or as long as
For the
national,
notes.
Yeah, as
not
long.
assuming as long as.
No, assuming. Why can't it be assuming?
Because I had an old boss that told me if you say assume, you're making an ass out of
Hey,
you and me.
Oh, Lord, you're
Mrs.
gonna
Piccioni,
be
I'll
a
never
pro.
forget that.
I like as long as, because then it makes me do it.
It's
Right.
very accountable.
And
Yeah.
that, we're just
Right,
guessing that you're doing it
yes.
right.
Okay, we did vote on that, correct?
We did.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did.
We approved it.
Mhm.
And I vote we don't work on these design guidelines.
We don't even have to vote on it,
That'd be
because
great.
I want Pat to get a copy.
I have a copy.
You do have a
already,
copy
yeah,
already.
And I'm just, to let you know, I'm reviewing it, there's a lot of mistakes in some of
Oh,
the stuff
and-
online and whatnot.
It's
Yeah.
very outdated and
No,
a
but
lot of
even
it,
what's online is wrong.
Isn't cohesive.
Okay.
So I wanna
They
review
don't
it all.
match, yeah, for
it
sure.
needs to all be rewritten.
Right,
With-
yeah, and I don't know if I told you, I used to write guidelines
So
like
that's
this.
just excellent.
Oh, man, we got
So,
the best person
yeah.
on it.
So I mean, I don't know if you know, I used to work for the city of Amaro. and
No,
so
I didn't know that.
This is what I did.
Okay.
I actually wrote and oversaw a $40,000 grant for a historical walking tour, 20 from the city, 20 from the state.
Mhm.
That was a ton of work with a professional historian hired. I worked on historic districts, I worked on the renovation of the old school, which was turned into CBRF, senior apartments, and then a community center.
Mhm.
So we had
Wow.
two different
Dynamic.
entities, and we had the developer, and then we had the city on one project, so we
Mhm.
had to have
Not
agreements.
complicated at all,
Yeah, and
right?
then the tax credits, and so then I did one design guideline for the Main Street, which I don't think is in use anymore, but that's that's a
Mhm.
long time ago in my past, but at least I've got a loose background.
Sure.
on
And maybe you could
Doing those
things.
work with Craig, because I know Craig is always busy, but he wants these updated and redone and,
It's
Right.
just time. They're
Yeah,
just
it's a time thing.
Antiquated.
yeah.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And the nice thing is that a lot of these are just some boilerplate stuff too, that
Okay.
you can pull off of line from other communities.
Mhm.
Like when I did Amros, we pulled out Cedarburgs and Galenas
Sure.
as a guideline, because those are like the primo
Yeah,
of
Yeah.
guidelines.
Yeah.
So you look at what they've done currently,
Yeah.
and then the National Trust for Historic Preservation has these things online too.
Mhm.
And I'm a member, I don't know if anybody else is a member, but I am a member of the National Trust. So it's like, you can.
It's available to us if
It's
we know how to
available
slice and dice and
if
make
you
it
know where to
applicable.
look for it. So
Mhm.
why reinvent the wheel
Yeah.
if it's out there? So when
Just-
you've got entities like the National Trust who are from the Main Street program, that's who runs the Main Street
Mhm.
program, if they have these things sort of boilerplate, you can,
Yeah.
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 There's
That's-
just so much, we went over it over maybe 3 months, just kind of summarizing, but so
Yeah.
much of it isn't even relevant anymore.
Right.
It just, it's
Right.
almost it's just a waste of time, and when people are really excited and they have a property and they wanna dive in and utilize this information, we're wasting
Right.
their time.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Right.
it's necessary.
Yeah, so I haven't had time to read through everything, but I did make a few notes on a few things
Okay.
already, so I mean, I'll
Perfect.
keep looking at that again and I'll look up online.
Mhm.
Yeah, so.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
The National Trust for Historic Preservation, which is run by the National Park System, which, of course, Main Street should have a tie into because that's a Main Street program.
Mhm.
This kind of stuff is what they do.
All available. And
Right.
Craig Berry may well be the best bridge we have for that right now.
Mhm.
Yeah,
He'd be able to speak to it, obviously.
yeah,
I sent Karen a message
thank you.
to get you on email.
Thank you, Kathy Lee.
Mhm.
No problem, pal. Cannot send.
Okay, items for the next agenda, I wrote down change to Wednesdays,
Thank you.
and Kathy Lee took care of the other one to get
me on the
Karen's the
emails.
email. Anything else?
Okay, so here are just some things that I'm bringing tonight.
Okay.
First of all, as an informational, this doesn't need to go on the agenda.
Okay.
Sure.
The Ripon Historical Society, the Pedrick Lawson House, it's 1857. It's one of the first grout houses
Mhm.
in Ripon, and if you don't know what grout, it's an early form of concrete. And basically it came from the Romans who conquered England, and the people in England took it to New York, and the people from New York brought it here to Ripon. So the man that owned the grout dealership built the Pedrick Lawson House in 1857. The grout is crumbling, we have problems with the porches pulling away. It is a separate listing on the National Register of Historic Places. It is also in a district, so it's sort of doubly covered on the
Mhm.
National Register. We just had it recurated last summer by interns and a professor from Ripon College, but it needs $43,000 worth of, or $34,000 worth of work. That work is starting this summer by Terry Lade, who
Mhm.
you know is a professional. This is his swan song. He will retire after this project, and his son will completely take over his company. So Terry's and his son are gonna start work with that this summer and complete it by this January. So, we actually found the original grout recipe from the 1850s of how that was made, and I guess it is lethal now and it cannot be used. There's some component in it that explodes or is something not
I
good.
wonder what it would be.
I don't know, I haven't seen the recipe
Yeah.
myself, but we do have the original recipe, so we're gonna be writing an article for the paper about the original recipe and the new recipe. So there's gonna be like a historic mason restoring the exterior of that
That's
house.
amazing. What's the address of the Pedrick Lawson?
515 Ransom, and if you ever want a tour, I'll take you through. The inside is in original condition, there's no running water, there's very little electricity, there's a couple plugs here and there. It's only had 3 owners since 1857, and the Ripon Historical Society got it in a will, and we've owned it since '73.
Wow.
So we have it and the barn behind it, and the barn behind it still has horse stalls in it. So the barn's in original condition. So last summer, 3 interns and their professor spent the 10 weeks in there recurating the exhibits. It's very fresh. For as old as the place is, it's very fresh, new exhibits.
That's amazing.
And so now we have problems with the exterior, so just so the commission is aware that that work is being done by a professional. The Historical Society has the $34,000, but we're gonna be starting a capital campaign to replace some of that because we can't keep draining
Mhm.
money on, that's a big pot of money for the Historical
Right.
Society, $34,000. But it is being done by one of the best in the state. Terry Labry did the surgeon's quarters in Portage, so even the state goes to Terry
That's cool.
for work.
He's the real deal.
He is the real deal. So, and he just did a salvage job Saturday on the 303 Blackburn. He's salvaging things out of the
I've seen
building.
his truck there a couple
Yeah,
times.
yeah, so he will be starting, so if you see work on that historic house,
Okay.
Is,
that's the reason.
is that considered locally designated?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Because I almost think that was on that list.
Really?
I
It's
do.
515 Ransom, and
Yeah.
we've owned it since 1973.
Mhm.
But before that, it only had 3 owners, so I mean, it's
You just,
really cool.
you know, you
Gotta
might,
come check it out.
Yeah,
I
we'll give you a
think-
tour, just
Is it
call
on the
anytime.
east or west side of Branson?
It would be on the east.
Okay.
And it looks like no one lives there, we're now putting up signage.
Okay.
It's been ignored for many years.
That's where the
So-
good stuff is.
Mhm.
Right, so now it's being reopened to the public and recurated and redone, and so we'll be doing a big splash about the exterior renovation.
That's great.
I'm sure you went to Sue Leahy for a building permit.
I don't take care of that, Steve Arba does.
Okay, because I'm just wondering, I mean, I just don't want people to say, why didn't they get a certificate of appropriateness if that, we'll have to check what's on that list.
I'll talk to Steve Arba.
Yeah,
But, I mean, if a certificate needs to be done, I
It'd be-
mean, I'm
yeah,
sure with Terry
it'll be-
Labe doing the work.
yes.
I mean, my goodness, that
Mhm.
man does such a
Mm.
phenomenal job. But we did talk about getting a building permit, so I don't know where Steve is. on
I'm
that.
sure he did, yeah.
I literally have no idea. He's our administrator, so.
Okay.
Okay, so a few ideas that I had to utilize some budget for the
Mhm.
next agenda is one, we have come up we've had so many projects we're working on right now, we've had to sort of put this one on the back burner. We're repainting and new carpeting and new exhibits, and there's a lot going on for a bunch of volunteers with only one paid person. So the plaques that went up by the Eagle Scout, we have a
Mhm.
whole program made up that those would be available to anybody in the city, either with a building or house, if you wanted one
Yeah.
on your
Mhm.
building.
Yeah.
Somebody wants one on their house, if they're in the national, or on,
Yeah.
what do I wanna say, if they're in a historic district or whatever.
Yeah,
So we are going to be coming out with that program and offering them to the public.
okay.
And we would oversee that program because we need to come up with the correct pictures and the correct
Mhm.
wording.
Description, yeah.
And then there'd be two different costs if somebody wants a sign with a QR code or without a QR code. If somebody wants a QR code, it's gonna cost more because we have to have Skip at Video Age Productions
Mhm.
make up a video to go with it, so it changes the cost of the sign. So it'd be exactly the signs that the Boy Scout uses, would just take the Boy Scout logo off
Mhm.
and that stuff, and offer it to the public. So that is, does this commission want to offer a grant towards those signs? Like $50 per sign, or we would run the program, but some of these signs, I can bring the cost, and Steve can bring that in. I think with a QR code, it's $500, and without a QR code, it's like $250 or something. Don't completely quote me on that.
Sure, but just as a ballpark.
As a ballpark, so even if somebody wants to order a sign, if we could maybe give some kind of a grant, $50 grant or whatever, to whoever wants one on Watson Street, that means our educational component is done, because
Mhm.
these individual signs can go up and down Watson Street.
Right,
But then the people would own their own sign, and if they want it changed or whatever, then we could do that. We're
Mhm.
also gonna put a sign on the cemetery, the Lawson House, our Pedrick, our buildings,
Mhm.
let's put it that
Right.
way. And we're looking at, we wanna put one on the American Legion building, because that is on the National Registry.
Mhm.
The church, that's on the National Registry. Some of these other, but we have money left in the pot to afford to do a few extra signs.
Mhm.
So that's another thing. Let's see how much money we have in our pot. And if we need an extra 500 for miscellaneous signs, maybe this committee wants to come up with extra money on top of that.
Mhm.
So my idea is the church should have, when they're a nonprofit, they should be
Right,
American
yes.
Legion, the Historical
Which
Societies.
church?
The
Congo?
UCC, yeah, that's on the
Mhm.
National Register. And then we have talked to the college about them purchasing signs and them putting them on their buildings.
Mhm.
So that discussion has already happened.
Okay.
We don't know if they're going to do it, but they're, for people visiting the college and whatnot, that makes something to talk about when the parents come to visit, and that
Mhm.
type of thing, to look at their
There's no question.
Yeah.
buildings. So we did have this discussion.
They're
with
funky
them.
though, you know, we never know which way they're gonna go.
Yeah, we were hoping that probably the new president, if we can reopen the discussion with the new president coming in,
Mhm.
it's basically a PR thing for them, because people love history, and so students are looking, or they have guests, that starts a conversation.
Yeah.
So,
I would think it would be nice, yeah.
yeah, so we did talk to the college about that. Okay.
So is it primarily business owners
No, it could be homeowners, like you could have one in your house if you wanted.
Because you said Watson, but it could be any part of Ripon.
It could be any part of
Mhm.
Ripon. Yeah, as long as we have it on the National Register, or we know the history of it, like the Octagon House. If the
Mhm.
homeowner wants to buy a plaque and put it on a pillar outside, there's a
Mhm.
different cost for that. That will make it much more interesting for people visiting the city, and we could make up a brochure after that.
Mhm.
There's all
Mhm.
kinds of possibilities. So just the thought is we would charge the people, but if this committee wanted to offer any kind of a grant towards that
Offset the
cost.
cost.
Yeah.
Offset the
I-
cost.
My first thought is, we should, if we're gonna give money, if we decide to, it should go for the, like Skip who does the filming.
QR code.
QR codes, things like that, more educational, that way, instead of, oh, Sarah got a grant for her sign, I didn't get a grant for my sign. You know what I'm saying? I'm not opposed to giving the money,
Right.
but I think it should go not to a particular person or building, unless it would be a nonprofit, I'm not against that either.
Sure.
But not a private held building.
Well, we can talk about that too,
Yeah.
and how that money, if it is a privately held building and it's $50 off, fine, you know, but,
Mhm.
yeah, the Skip is, I think, about 200 or 250 to come up with all the, you know, because we have to come
Right.
up with more pictures, and then
Mhm.
we have to, our archivist has to come up with a longer spiel to talk.
Of
and
course.
it just-
Right.
and
I
he
just
has to
don't, I
read
think
it.
people are gonna have a problem if Sarah got one and John didn't get a grant.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you know
As
what
an
I'm saying?
example.
Or maybe the first 50 people to apply for a grant get it, or, you know,
Yeah.
come up with a pot of money, and
Sure.
then that incites people to do it now, instead of waiting.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ideas.
Right,
But-
and we can talk with Adam, you know,
And
if Adam
Steve-
was here, he'd tell us yes or no, you should
Yeah.
put it here, not there, or whatever.
Yeah.
And Steve can come with a whole proposal, I'll just talk to him about that,
Mhm.
because we have everything sort of ready to roll, we're just a little bit overwhelmed with other projects right now.
Sure. Well, I
So-
think Steve had mentioned at one of the meetings that he joined us for months back that obviously if there are, quantities that we can take advantage of, it brings
It's
the.
Yes.
cheaper.
So there's all of that too, which
Because I definitely want one.
I definitely want
Yeah.
one. Like, I
Right.
would love to have, I mean, I just am so fascinated.
Yeah,
And if
and
I
it's-
can have that support from the Historical Society.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
that's, so we want it to be our project,
Yeah.
but we'd like to see, what we're trying to do now at the Historical Society, we're too few people, and, we need to partner with other entities to get projects done.
Yeah.
So we're looking at forming partnerships with other entities to accomplish some of these things.
Mhm.
So for us, it takes us a lot of work to pick out the picture and write this up and then order the plaques. And if it's a QR code, we have to get more pictures and more write-up. And
Yeah.
it takes time, but if we partner with other people
Mhm.
that help with things, it's
Yes.
better. So, yeah. But yes, we order in quantity, it comes way down for the cost.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay, the other thing that I thought of, that Kathy Lee said, was it you, Kathy Lee, that said this was discussed before, or,
What are you talking about?
oh, maybe I talked to Steve about it, I get so confused. Okay, so we're trying to educate people, if they're not educated about what a historic district is and where they are and what they do. Of course, I love the idea that this is in Fond du Lac, that they have these street signs designating districts.
Mhm.
So it would be nice if even this could be one historic district a year. We'd
Mhm.
first do Watson Street with signs like this, then we do then we do the Ceresco district, then we do the College district, then we do the,
Tiger Street or,
yeah, if it was even a 6-year project, that we get a cost on doing something like this.
Mhm.
Because as people walk through the city and we have people visit the city, they look at this and they love historic, they
Mhm.
say historic tourism is very high right now.
Mhm.
We've got a lot of people down Watson Street.
More
and
than
they'll-
ever, more than
Mhm.
ever.
Right, so having something like
Yes.
this.
The timing's interesting. Obviously, we're redoing all of the street signs on Watson. We're taking down all of the treated wood that looks very rural.
Right.
Replacing it with the cast iron, which looks more historic anyway,
Mhm.
and cleaning things up.
Mhm.
So the timing of this conversation is,
So,
Perfect.
I'm not
Pretty
saying
appropriate.
that we do all the districts at once,
It might be better just to get them done.
If the cost.
budget.
though.
Yeah, the cost,
We don't know what
right.
the cost is.
Mhm.
But if there's a plan, we do half this year, half next year.
Right.
We're using our budget and we're utilizing it to educate the public
Mhm.
about where our districts are. I'm sure some people that even live in the historic districts have no idea.
They
live
don't, yeah,
In a
I'm
historic
sure.
district.
Mhm.
Look at the Tiger Street district.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's to me, that fits under education.
It's interesting,
Mhm.
Pat, that you're saying, historic, everything is on the rise for tourists.
It
But
is.
people in our town don't even know they're in a historic district.
Mhm.
We should really talk about that too.
Well, and that's where if you put up a sign like this,
Yeah.
Steve and I write Now and Then in Ripon. That
Mhm.
is our column.
Yeah,
We have to write 52 things a year. It's a lot of work to come up with 52 articles a year between the two of us,
Mhm.
So when we have opportunities like this is our opportunity to write articles. Now, Steve and I are writers. We can say, okay,
Mhm.
you're gonna do the Tiger Street District. We'll write an article about it and it'll accompany it in the paper.
Sure.
So that's how we get that educational component that people live,
right.
they live in a district.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, this it's so easy doing that because you can go up online and Google the registry paperwork for the district, almost copy what's on there, and boom, you've got a newspaper article, and that's separate from Now and Then in Ripon, obviously. It's a different article that would come from the city, from this commission.
Mhm.
So this type of thing, every time you put these signs up, would give an opportunity for a different article in the paper about whatever district or whatever area it's in. So, and those are so easy, and I would volunteer to write those, because I'm already writing history constant. Kathy Lee sometimes rolls her, sorry, sweetie. She rolls her eyes at Steve and I because we're talking
so
about this stuff.
Shut the
'Cause that's-
hell up.
Yeah.
But you can only imagine if you're trying to come up with 52 ideas
Exactly.
a year, you're
Mhm.
like, okay, well, what about this, and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
and
Those,
whatever.
those street signs, I think it was Haley, Julian,
Yeah.
a couple years ago brought that up. She saw them in Oshkosh.
Yeah,
And again, everybody was on board with it, but nobody really had the time to follow through
Well,
on it.
yeah.
And the money at that time, we were getting $1,000 a year, and that went with, in no
see, and
time.
my idea is, if you start producing, the city starts giving a bigger budget. Or you start, like at the Historical Society, when we put it out there about that marquetry table, that we
Mhm.
wanted $1,500, we ended up getting over 4,000, which allowed us to redo the exhibit, the whole exhibit, just to fit that marquetry table in.
Mhm.
But we would never have known that that opportunity was there unless we all read it in the paper.
Right.
And for
Right.
those of us where that strikes a chord, it gave us an opportunity to participate.
Right, so
But it's just sharing,
information.
Yeah, right.
So
Well, someone
why
that can
can't,
do all that is what.
you don't even know if somebody from the city would step forward and say, the sign's going up on my corner, I'll pay for it.
Right.
We don't know.
we don't know.
No, we don't.
Until it actually starts,
Mhm.
or if you do budget one district a year, and it's a 6-year project.
Mhm.
Well, it's, if you give them basic information, I'll use the cafe lights across Watson.
Right.
There were monies given to that. People just want a chance to participate if they
Yes.
get behind it. So, Craig talked about a GoFundMe situation if we didn't get to those levels. I think we'd be surprised. I think we have a lot
I
of people
agree.
that celebrate.
I think are you talking about the lights, girl?
Yeah,
I think that fizzled out because the lights didn't work. They weren't effective. There's so many burnt out all the time.
Oh, the bulbs.
But
But
right
they
now
did
they're-
But
raise
he
the money.
changed the bulbs, or type
Yeah.
of bulbs.
Oh, I'm not talking about on top of the buildings.
Across
The
the
strings,
street.
yeah.
I'm talking about this year, they just went up, swagged across the street.
Are those working?
Yes,
Oh, that's good.
yes. But
Yeah.
that was that was a $20,000 initiative, and we didn't know if we'd raise a quarter of that, but it was just through a network that we pulled it off. But but the marquetry table is the best example.
Right.
I would never have known that had a chance to come back.
And here we put an
And
article in.
It took me
Yeah.
3 seconds to read the article, and I'm all about it. couldn't have been
the-
more excited.
The public stepped up, and because of that generosity, our permanent exhibits have not been changed in almost 20 years.
How could they?
So, right, because we don't have the time and the money, so now, because we need to put that marquetry table someplace that respects what it is, we're redoing 2 rooms of permanent exhibits, and that money allowed us to do that. So.
I mean, there's an article. You should share that.
Yeah,
with-
share that.
Yeah, it's been out once, but
Okay.
when the exhibits are done, we're actually gonna have everybody invited, all the donors, and then this committee and whatever, over for like wine and hors d'oeuvres.
It's
To
fabulous.
do a thank you
Mhm.
for that donation.
Yeah.
So that's in the works. That's why I'm saying we have so much going on right
But
now.
that just
Yeah.
reinforces all of those that leaned in.
Right.
And if you're cut from that cloth, I think it's just a way to create more
Right.
excitement.
So I learned, if I haven't learned anything working with nonprofits, if you don't do the ask, you don't get the money. So it's a matter of asking the public or asking
Mhm.
somebody individually, can you give $500 or whatever?
Sure.
But I think designations of those historic districts would be very educational, and we'd have to get a cost budgeted out if we have to,
Mhm.
or
Is
somebody
there,
might
is
step
there,
up.
strength in maybe prioritizing?
Prioritize, well, we
Like,
can go,
which
we
of
gotta get
those-
costs first too.
Or do you want to work on them separately?
Good question, Kathy Lee, I haven't thought about that, so
Yeah.
percolate that in my brain.
It just kind of seems like it's gonna be a lot, because we only meet once a month.
Right, but
Mhm.
the signs for the buildings are really a historical society project. All I'm saying is, do we want to open that up to a grant?
Right, and that's, we'll discuss,
Right, so the
yes.
signs for the historic districts would more or less not be the historical society, it would be
The
this
city-
committee.
Yes,
Okay.
because it's a city
But we could,
sign.
I would, since I'm on the committee and I do the research, I could also help write an article
Mhm.
for the paper, or the Commonwealth can write it too, you know?
Mhm.
Okay, so then I have a third thing, and I talked to Adam about this, and I don't know if this is something for this agenda or future agenda. We have talk about the Haas Brewery barn
Mhm.
and what's happening to that. If it is staying, that should go on the National Register. And so it should have a historic survey done on it first. That's the first step, to put it on the National Register. We do have somebody that we've used in the past in Ripon to do that registry paperwork. I don't know if she's still doing it, you know, age and
Mhm.
COVID and everything. If she can't do it, I know another historian. The state has a list of professional historians to do this. So basically, to do a historical survey and get it on the National Register, you're talking about $2,500, okay? Again, that's something maybe the public wants to help come up with the money, but in the
Mhm.
future, we need to remember that if that barn is staying, it should be designated
Mhm.
on the state and national level.
Do we know what's going on with that barn? I know at one point it was sold and then it was.
Well,
Yeah,
I believe it, most people in the city want to see it go,
That's too bad.
but, yeah, it's too bad.
mhm.
I think it should stay, personally.
There's not a really good adaptive reuse for it,
No.
but it's a cool barn.
Mhm.
And it's a kind of a funky property.
Yeah, and the
Down
DNR would be.
kinda-
We did, if you remember back a couple months, we made a statement to city council
Yeah.
that we want it to stay,
Mhm.
and if it falls into disrepair, I'm trying to think of how we worded it, but if it falls into disrepair, that the wood is repurposed. You know what I'm saying? Not just thrown in a landfill or whatever like that. And that was okayed by the city council.
But I know.
But we're still looking for somebody to.
Stephanie
to buy.
Prowitz has said it's the only open land along Silver Creek, and so Stephanie has an interest in getting involved. I'm not saying anything is happening now, but we need to keep in mind that a historic survey should be our first step
Mhm.
with that building, because it's never been surveyed, so.
Right.
You have a professional historian come in, they do all the paperwork, they do all the research, which is easy in Ripon, we have all the information. And then, from that historic survey, then it goes to the state,
Mhm.
then to the national. So I'm just saying, that is something that could be discussed
So
sometime
would
by
the-
this commission.
You-
New owner not pay for that though?
Well, it depends if it's the city's keeping it, if an owner buys it.
I'm so sorry.
When we got that years ago, there was a push to get it on the National Register. But because it was city property, there was always the thought that, okay, if it's on the register, somebody comes to buy it and they want to knock it down because they
You
want to
can.
put, you still can, yes, I know you can, but at that time, that was the reasoning of the city not to put it on the register.
But that's not
It's not a good,
it's, yeah, because I've seen buildings delisted. I've been in Madison
Mhm.
to have buildings put on, and I've seen buildings, all they can do is delist the buildings. That's it.
right.
There are no rules unless you have local ordinances.
If it's locally designated, that makes it harder.
But
even with that-
we don't have an ordinance preventing.
Right, you can.
Right.
Yes.
So, just because it's on the National
Mhm.
Register basically means nothing to the new owner unless they
Mhm.
want to get tax credits to do something
Right.
with it. So the city council just needs to be better educated about
Mhm.
what that means, which it
Right.
basically means nothing,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's the local designation
Mhm.
that, or the local ordinance that protects those buildings.
Well, Craig did say in his email back to you, I believe this week, with him being absent tonight, he did bring up the Haas stable and said
Yep.
that one item for next month's agenda is helping to clear the brush and debris that are surrounding it and starting to impede the health of the
Mhm.
structure.
Of the
And
structure.
that he'd be willing to volunteer to be hands on that job,
Yeah.
which I think is at least a nice first
Yeah,
step. And
Yeah.
and I know, I've talked with Steve Reimer a couple of times about it, he's willing to help.
I don't know, Steve.
And he's really into history.
Yeah.
He used to be on this committee.
Mhm.
He lives in a big house in the Tigard Historic District,
Okay.
even though it's just him and his wife.
Mhm.
He used to own the roller rink here in town,
Oh,
which is
really?
a fun fact. But he is a blacksmith, and he's
Mhm.
also a plasterer,
Mhm.
sort of like a handyman. But his age and health is getting to him a little bit, but he,
A lot of it.
yeah,
Yeah, just recently, it's
yeah, he's aging.
declining.
But he really has an interesting wealth of knowledge, let's put it that way.
It's wonderful.
But I don't know about that building, I'm just saying that if it's staying, it should have a historic survey done on
Mhm.
it. And that's gonna cost some money, and somebody has to pay for that.
Right.
But we've got some money here. And I always think if you don't utilize your money, then why, if we're sitting on a pot of money, why in the future would the city give us more?
Exactly, that's why we need to
yeah,
spend it.
Right, you need to sort of come up with projects that the aldermen
Mhm.
can see that are visible, that we're making sense of utilizing the public's money.
Right.
Then the other thing that I just want to bring up is I want to put a date on the calendar that everybody on this commission comes to tour the Historical Society and the archives. A lot of people have never stepped, people don't realize that the archives is, we have PhD researchers down there quite often. And people don't realize what a wealth of information is sitting here at their fingertips. They don't utilize it. You and Tom Rogers utilize our archivist all the time, but it's just what do we actually have, and what kind of maybe partnership, or if you need something, okay, we probably have it, you know,
Mhm.
vice versa. So
We-
just in the future, I'd like to do
We
like
could
a
probably
tour.
just schedule, like,
The
the
next
next meeting, and that is our meeting, we go to
The Historical
Society
do a full
and,
tour.
yeah.
Right, and it's, I think once people see, like, our archives was put into a Spancrete bunker. I'm not kidding
Mhm.
you, it's a Spancrete climate-controlled bunker. So if a tornado or anything comes through, all the photos, the.
Preserved.
Yeah, it's, yeah, all of our papers, all of the, everything down there is there, and our archivist is very, very professional, and everything's in acid-free folders and boxes and acid-free paper, and it's all logged into the
It's
computer
amazing.
where things are, and it's, we're in a little bit of we're repainting and moving artifacts and doing some things now, so it's a bit in disarray, but not
Mhm.
the archives, those are,
Pristine.
yeah, so it just, I think this commission should have some grasp of the
Sure.
resources available
Mhm.
in that building. Anyway, so that, but you
Okay.
will, everybody will be invited to a
Great.
cocktail party to have some fun and see finished.
See the table.
Yeah, and finished exhibits. We've got a professor from the college working with the dean of faculty's wife. so very highly professional.
Mhm.
He teaches
History.
museum studies at
Oh,
the college.
okay.
So he's the one doing the 2 front rooms
Mhm.
with the dean of faculty's wife, so it's much better than any volunteer could come up with, let's put it that way, because if they want to do it, yes, please.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are just some of my ideas.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
That,
Well,
whatever.
yeah, thank you. Any other next agenda items?
We're gonna have a full one next month.
We'll have a full one now. We'll talk
Do we
about
know
all
of
that.
any buildings that are gonna need to be appropriated?
Coming up, I haven't heard any,
I haven't either.
no. I have not.
So I make a motion to adjourn.
We need Kathy Lee always gives us our next
July
meeting date.
6th would be Wednesday, the first Wednesday.
Wednesday, so it'd be the July 6th, you said?
Yeah.
That's a hard one. Oh, no, it's right after 4th of July weekend. so
July
that's not good.
6th, Wednesday.
If we can do that.
If we can do it, yes, and I'll find out right away tomorrow. Now, there is a motion to adjourn,
I'll second.
second by Sarah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Well, thanks all.
Now you can go to your game.
Gotta
How
get there.
exciting.
Yeah.
My son was a golfer in high school, so it's somebody said, don't you go to golf matches? I'm like, you don't understand. You can't walk around 18 holes and golf.